Picture this scenario. You finally get that promotion you've been working toward for 3 years. The salary bump is significant. In your mind, you calculate the math. I can finally save money. I can finally get ahead. But 6 months later, you check your bank account, and the number is exactly the same as it was when you were earning 20% less. You aren't saving more, you're just spending more. This isn't a failure of willpower. It isn't because you bought too many lattes or didn't budget your groceries correctly. You were caught in a sophisticated psychological and economic web designed to keep you running in place. From the 18th century dressing gown of a French philosopher to the suburban explosion of the 1950s, the system is rigged to neutralize your wealth the moment you create it. Today, we are going to dismantle the machinery of modern consumerism. We're going to look at the Diderot effect, the hedonic treadmill, and the historical engineering that turned citizens into consumers. You feel broke because the economy relies on you feeling broke. Let's explore why. Welcome back to Finance Illustrated. Usually, when we talk about being trapped financially, we look at external forces, predatory lending, stagnant wages, or housing market bubbles. And while those are critical pieces of the puzzle, there is an internal mechanism that is arguably more dangerous because it feels entirely voluntary. We tend to view our spending habits as a series of isolated choices. You choose to buy the phone, you choose to lease the car. But behavioral economics tells us that these aren't isolated choices. They are predictable responses to biological triggers. There's a reason why a lottery winner and a person who suffers a tragic accident often report the same levels of happiness 1 year after the event. There's a reason why buying a new couch suddenly makes your old carpet look unbearable. In this video, we are going to trace the history of the spending trap. We will look at the specific psychological phenomena that marketers have weaponized against your bank account. We will break down the research from Brickman, Campbell, and Kahneman to understand your own brain, and we will look at how the post-World War II economy was restructured to ensure you never actually have enough. If you want to understand why you can't get off the wheel, you first have to understand the story of a man and his dressing gown. To understand modern debt, we have to go back to France in the mid-1700s. Denis Diderot was a famous philosopher, the co-founder of Encyclopedia, but for most of his life, he was nearly broke. That changed when Catherine the Great, the Empress of Russia, heard of his financial troubles and offered to buy his library for a massive sum. Suddenly, Diderot had money. To celebrate, he acquired a beautiful scarlet robe, a luxury dressing gown. He described it as imperious and stunning, but there was a problem. When he wore this magnificent new robe and sat in his study, everything else looked terrible by comparison. His old straw chair, garbage. His rugged wooden desk, embarrassing. The contrast was painful. So Diderot began to upgrade. He replaced the straw chair with one covered in Moroccan leather. He replaced his desk. He bought expensive prints to hang on the walls. He upgraded his mirror. Before long, the room matched the robe, but Diderot was broke again. He wrote an essay about this experience titled "Regrets on Parting with My Old Dressing Gown." In it, he wrote, "I was the absolute master of my old dressing gown, but I have become a slave to my new one." This is known today as the Diderot effect. It explains that obtaining a new possession often creates a spiral of consumption, which leads you to acquire more new things. As a result, we end up buying things that our previous selves never needed, just to feel a sense of unity in our identity. Think about your own life. You don't just buy a new iPhone. You buy the case, the fast charger, the AirPods, and the Apple Watch to match the ecosystem. You don't just buy a new house. You realize your old furniture looks wrong in the new living room, so you finance a whole new set. The Diderot effect is the enemy of the saver. It attacks the moment you try to level up your life. It turns a single purchase into a lifestyle overhaul. In consumer research, this is viewed as a departure from the status quo. Your identity shifts. You are no longer the person who sits in a straw chair. You are the person who sits in Moroccan leather. And the market knows that once you upgrade your identity, you will spend whatever it takes to maintain that image. But the Diderot effect only explains how the spending spirals. It doesn't fully explain why the satisfaction of buying these things disappears so quickly. For that, we have to look at the hedonic treadmill. In 1971, researchers Brickman and Campbell published a groundbreaking study. They found that human beings have a baseline level of happiness. When something good happens, like a raise, a new car, or a new relationship, your happiness spikes. But your brain is designed to adapt. It's a survival mechanism. If you were permanently in a state of euphoria, you wouldn't be alert to danger. So your brain works overtime to bring you back to your baseline. This adaptation is rapid. It's why the new car smell is literally and metaphorically fleeting. This is the hedonic treadmill. You have to keep running, keep spending, keep upgrading just to stay at the same level of satisfaction you had before. Historically, humans sought utility. You bought a coat to stay warm. Once you were warm, the need was met. Today, we don't buy for utility. We buy for the dopamine hit of the acquisition. The economy is built on the fact that you will adapt. If you actually stayed happy with your iPhone X, Apple would go out of business. The system requires your dissatisfaction. This is where the concept of lifestyle inflation comes from. It isn't just that you spend more money because you have more money. It's that your threshold for what constitutes normal has moved. This ties directly into what sociologist Thorstein Veblen called conspicuous consumption back in 1909. Veblen argued that we buy visible goods to signal status to our peers. In modern research by Hahn, Nunez, and Drez, they found that this has evolved into quiet versus loud luxury. But whether it's a giant logo or a subtle, expensive fabric, the goal is the same: social signaling. The hedonic treadmill ensures that once you achieve a certain status, it becomes your new floor. You can't go back to the old car. You can't go back to the smaller apartment. To do so would feel like a loss, a failure. You are running on a treadmill that is speeding up, and the only way to stay on is to keep swiping the card. Now, you might be thinking, okay, this is human nature, and to an extent it is. But the intensity of this trap isn't natural. It was engineered. We need to look at the history of the modern spending trap, specifically post-World War II America. Before the war, the average person was frugal. The Great Depression had taught a generation to mend, repair, and save. But after the war, the United States had a massive industrial capacity and no war to fight. The factories that made tanks needed to make cars. The factories that made parachutes needed to make nylon stockings. To keep the economy from collapsing, the government and corporations had to fundamentally change how people thought about money. They had to invent the consumer. This era gave birth to Levittown and the suburban sprawl. With the GI Bill providing mortgages, millions moved into new houses. But a house is just a box. It needs to be filled. This was the golden age of advertising. Marketing shifted from informational, telling you what a product did, to emotional, telling you who you would be if you bought it. This was the birth of planned obsolescence. Manufacturers realized that if they made a light bulb or a fridge that lasted forever, they'd sell it once and never see the customer again. They began designing products to fail or to become unfashionable within a few years. But the real trap was the democratization of credit. Before the 1950s, if you didn't have the cash, you didn't buy it. The introduction of the credit card changed the equation. It detached the pain of paying from the pleasure of buying. If this video made you see your own spending habits differently, hit the like button. It helps this channel reach people who need to hear this. Subscribe to Finance Illustrated if you want to understand money, psychology, and the systems that quietly shape your financial life. And comment below, what was the last purchase that triggered a spending spiral for you? Awareness is always the first step off the treadmill.